Okay, folks, and good evening, and welcome to our podcast tonight with ex-Rangers 9-in-a-row legend Davie Robertson. Davie will be talking about his new book coming out, The Quiet Man Roars, and joined tonight also will be Alistair Aird, folks, who has helped Davie produce the book. Both guys will be on soon. Folks, number 55's in the bag. Rangers are the champions. They can't take that away from us. And I don't know well any have seen it tonight. In the last hour or so, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai has been lit up in Rangers colours, and I've managed to get the video. So I'm going to play this for everybody to see what's happening in Dubai. Okay, folks, that was pretty amazing. And well done to all the guys in Dubai Loyal for getting that sorted. Folks, get the questions coming in. We'll have Davie and Alistair on very soon. So how was everybody's day yesterday? It was great to see Tavernier lift the 55 title, folks. I can say I felt a little bit delicate this morning after the beer I had last night. But anyway, sure, hopefully it'll be a regular occurrence now. So, folks, if I hit my button, Davie should appear along with Alistair. So we've got Davie on, and now we've got Alistair. Evening, guys.
Hello, how are we? All right?
How are you?
All good?
Yep, all good.
All good. Right, before we move on, Davie, and Alistair about the book. Davie, how will the players be? You've sampled plenty of titles at Rangers. How will the players be feeling?
Yeah, obviously there's been a lot of pressure on them, but I think it's almost been a bit of a walk in the park this season. And to finish, as strong as we did yesterday was fantastic. I think the only thing missing was no supporters. I know there was supporters outside, and in spirit everybody's there, but just the actual final day when you get presented with a trophy, it's a special day. Obviously you're in front of your home fans, over 50,000 at Ibrox, and your family, your kids, all that come on the pitch as well. It's a special occasion. I think they've missed out a little bit, but I think the main thing was just to get that number 55 and end that. So should I say other lots bid for 10?
Yeah. Good. Alistair, you celebrate yourself?
Aye. I have to admit I was a wee bit emotional.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed the game. Obviously, there was that wee bit of edge to it in the respect that we wanted the clean sheet record, and we wanted to end the season unbeaten. I can agree with David that not having the opportunity to have supporters in the stadium. I think I was on another show last week, and somebody actually asked what I thought or who I thought would get the loudest roar. I think the roof would have come off the place when Steven Gerrard got the trophy. Yesterday had there been fans there, but when Tav lifted it, whether it's a guy thing to admit that you cry or not, I was a blubbering mess about 2:30 yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. So obviously, guys, we've had Davie on before on the show, and obviously the new book's coming out. I have read most of the book. I've missed out because obviously what happened yesterday didn't get finished in it. Great read so far. Alistair, how did this come about then?
Again, noticed that David was on Facebook, noticed that he was back in the country, having come back from Kashmir, and just sent him a message through Facebook to ask if he was interested. Come back fairly quickly, and things kind of moved on from there. And over a period of about 9 months, we managed to pull everything together and get things in place, and obviously now out and available to buy. And fantastic project, fantastic opportunity again for me. The contacts that I've managed to build up through some of the previous books that I've done, plus this one. David had managed to get me in touch with a lot of people that had either managed them or played alongside them, and obviously I think that's a nice way to round the book off. We obviously start off with David's story, which in itself, from its beginning to its middle and obviously where it is at the moment, it's a fantastic tale. But then to get that opportunity to speak to the guys and get their insight into what it was like to either manage David or play alongside David or be managed by David, I think, as I say, it's a nice touch to round things off.
Yeah. And obviously for you, Davie, obviously with the Real Kashmir, the TV show, which we all watched, an excellent show. Obviously the book was a no-brainer for you. It had to be done.
I just actually got back from Kashmir. We've been locked in for 49 days, and I think about a week, Alistair sent me a message about would I be interested, and of course I would be. There's been a couple of attempts before to do it, but obviously there was no India part and unhappy wives and things like that. There was none of that in it. No, there wouldn't have been any, but it was a bit of that was a long process. But Alistair, as soon as we started talking, I think we hit it off pretty quickly. And the research that Alistair did was fantastic. Made it actually enjoyable. The previous experience I had was a bit of a slog. But Alistair, we'd chat maybe half an hour, every couple of nights or so. Alistair would tell me a lot of things about myself that I didn't know. He'd tell me about certain games as I played in youth teams and all sorts, and that I couldn't even remember playing in them. And it was just fantastic. And he touched on at the end of all the people he spoke to about me. It was actually really nice for me to read what people thought of me as a player, as a person. And, I just wish I knew about that about 20 years earlier when I played, or 30 years it is now since I played at Rangers. I'd had a little bit more confidence in myself. I thought I was just one of these guys that was almost invisible, came in, maybe I won the lucky dip and managed to put the Rangers shirt on. But no, it's just been a fantastic experience, and it was a proud moment actually when the book came out, and my life's there, and I think when people read it, they'll realise it. I may talk a lot now and swear on television, but probably for the majority of my life until I hit America, that I probably wouldn't say two words to anybody. I was that shy, typical Aberdonian, shy, nervous kind of guy with not a lot of self-confidence.
Yeah, because what I picked out of the book was a number of times you said in the book, basically didn't think you were a great player. You didn't have the confidence. That's been repeated loads of times. Yeah,
but it's just the way. I think it was maybe the way I started when I didn't play football. My dad eventually got me involved in football. I didn't make the primary school team, and eventually got in because by default got on as a subbed off again. I was that bad. And I think that's really sort of, it stuck me through my career. And the funny thing is I'm actually more confident as a coach as I was as a player. And like I say, throughout my career, more so at Rangers, particularly the first couple of years, I knew that I was at Rangers based on the fact that the foreign rule, and obviously I was Scottish. But as maybe year 3 or 4, 5 and 6 at Rangers happened, I realised that I must have been, a half decent player, because at that point Rangers could have gone and signed anyone. And then you look who eventually they signed, Arthur Newman, one of the world class fullbacks. So I've got to pinch myself a lot of times, and like I say, I just wish I'd known what people's thoughts were when I was actually playing alongside them. I might have made a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and obviously for you also the work that goes into the book, because when I'm reading that book, you're taking Davie back to when he was 15 years of age, and you're naming players who he played with and he's probably forgot about, and the results of the game he played in, and all this here. Is that just pure research from yourself?
Listen, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to a project like this, it's about covering all the bases. There's a lot of stuff that's out there already, public domain, but that's only part of the story. For me, an autobiography like the one that we've worked on isn't just about the football career. I think you need to get that personal side, and one of the things that came out from David's story straight away was how much of a family man he is, how much he misses his family when he's away, particularly out in Kashmir. And just to kind of pick up on the thread we were talking about earlier, having spoken to the likes of Walter Smith, Walter basically said that he didn't even need to look at the left back position. If David was fit, David was in the team. When you consider that Walter is probably in our lifetime the greatest manager we've had, I don't think you can get much higher praise than that. But no, in terms of the research, that's that's kind of what I'm about. And there might be some people that think I get into too much detail and I try and cover too many bases. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't like to leave many stones unturned when it comes to somebody's life story. So David would send me through things for scrapbooks. I was touching base with coaches that had coached them at schoolboy level and getting things clarified with them as well, and getting some detail and going through old newspapers. It's, to be honest, it's part of the project that I really enjoy, just finding wee nuggets and finding wee gems, and then obviously having the chance to speak to David and then kind of flesh that out a bit.
Yeah.
To me, that makes the book and that makes the story.
Yeah, brilliant. And obviously, Davie, starting out at football, obviously Aberdeen, you played under Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, what a manager Sir Alex has ended up his career. But
yeah, I think to be honest, I was fortunate enough at the early part, and there's no secret or no surprise how well he's done, and probably the best manager in Scottish manager ever been around. And it was good to just be there, a part of it, and he did a lot of toughness. The mental toughness is certainly something he drilled into me, and the never say die, the never, and even in the face of defeat, just keep going, and many a times that happened, and you felt a bit sorry for yourself at the time, the bollockins and the hair dryers, and the spit you get in your face and everything like that. But it's something you got on with it, you learn, and I think it really helped me when I went to Rangers, because you end up going to a club where you have to win every single game. And the amount of times, probably in the 92-93 season, whether a goal down or 2 goals down, particularly against Marseille, there was just that belief, and I think it, having had the grounding with Alex Ferguson, certainly helped me in the move to Rangers.
Yeah. And obviously, we're not going to give too much away about the book because people have got to buy it if they want to read it. But you had a chance to go to Man United, Dave.
Yeah, I was actually playing in it was a youth game for Aberdeen. I was in the first team at the time, but there was still the Scottish Youth Cup was still going on. We're playing Celtic at Celtic Park, and didn't get back to about Fergie had already gone to Manchester United at that point. And for some reason, he was back in Aberdeen that night when we arrived back, and I think it was at 1:00 in the morning. I leave, put the hampers back in Pataudry, jump in the car, driving home, 30 mile an hour, look in the mirror, and there's somebody tailing me, going through this little council estate where my family live, and I just, being 17 or 18 at the time, decided to put my foot down. I'm going 8 mile an hour, and this car was about an inch away from me the whole way. Didn't think anything of it. And then realised, shit, this could be the police here. So I pulled over. And it turns out it was Alex Ferguson who tailed me all the way. I jumped into his car and asked if I'd go to Manchester United. And obviously, when you sit in Alex Ferguson's car or anybody's car at that age, and the way I was, I'm just yes, no, terrified to talk. And he obviously went home and told me, my mum and dad woke them up and told them that Alex Ferguson, has asked me to go to Manchester United. And unfortunately, I was on a silly contract at the time. It was a 4-year contract, but a two-year contract with a 2-year option, but the option was the clubs. So I was on like something about 65 quid a week, and if they wanted to keep me on when I was in the first team, they can keep me on the 65 quid a week. So to be honest, I think it was a great honour, and it was great that Sir Alec, felt that way about me. But I think I was possibly a little bit too young at 18. Manchester United weren't the team they are, in the past couple of decades. So it might have been a step too far for me, but nothing ever came of it. Although there was a big, I was keen. I mean, when Fergie actually left, Archie took the team, took one game, and he left me out. And Ian Porterfield, who came into the Aberdeen job, he watched the game and says, "Oh, we'll just go with the same team." And it wasn't until the late Teddy Scott said, "No, Davie's done really well. He has to play." And Teddy told me a few years later that they actually wanted, Porterfield to forget about me and then get me for nothing at the end of the season. So,
Fergie was still up to his tricks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it just shows you the details he went. I mean, whoever would have thought? Particularly somebody like myself, would get chased up the road by Alex Ferguson.
Yeah. Brilliant. I mean, the book's a great read. Obviously, as well, Davie, the Aberdeen team you played in, there were some great players in that team. I mean, McLeish was there, William Miller was there.
Yeah, I was fortunate that part of the Gothenburg era with Jim Leighton, obviously Alec McLeish, Willie Miller. But the one player that really stuck out for me was Peter Weir. Very fortunate to, even though he's coming to the end of his career, I remember sitting at Terracins watching him destroy Mick Mills of Ipswich. And he was just a fantastic player, and he really, really helped me. I always talk about Brian Laudrup and the partnership I had with him, how he made my game easy. But, Peter, if it wasn't for Peter Weir, I would never have reached the heights that I did. He really encouraged me. And, and obviously there was guys like Charlie Nicholas, Jim Bett, John Hughes scored the winner in Gothenburg. Just very, very fortunate, and particularly when, I had posters of some of these guys up on my wall as a kid. Willie Miller, and then suddenly you're in the same dressing room as him. You're, playing right next to him, even though he was a bit grumpy. And I got blamed for all his missed passes. And, obviously because he was an Aberdeen legend, he used to point a finger at me. The Aberdeen supporters would slaughter me. And I just accept it until, one day I had to go back at him. And to be fair, I probably should have done it a couple of years early, because he never said another word to me after I stood up for myself.
Brilliant, Davie, brilliant. So then, obviously, after Aberdeen, then it's obviously you've made the big move to Rangers. Now, I know, and you've told us before in the book, that Graham Souness had made a move for you, and then Souness obviously was appointed Liverpool manager, and you thought that was the end of it, the dream was dead.
Yeah, when I was at Aberdeen, we were coming back from Seaton Park, where we trained in the minibus. Obviously, there was no training grounds in those days, and the radio was on, and it was a few weeks before we actually played the league decider at Ibrox, when obviously Rangers won that day. But we're coming back in, and breaking news: Graham Souness has left Rangers and gone to Liverpool, and I'd already agreed with Graham Souness to go there. And all the Aberdeen supporters are jumping about the bus, delighted, because at that point Aberdeen had a chance of winning the league, and I'm the only person there sitting with my head in my hands, thinking, "What next? Where am I going? Is it all over?" But to be fair, Walter, obviously they must have been very, very close as a management team, and they kept it going. I remember meeting them. I think it was Dunblane or Stonehaven. I met him 4 or 5 days before that league deciding game, and agreed to go to Rangers. And it was a great time. I remember when I don't know if this part's in the book. I'm sitting in the back of the car. My agent Jim MacArthur's in the passenger seat. Walter's obviously in the driver's seat within his BMW, and obviously the deal's virtually done. But Jim decides to try and squeeze a little bit more money out of him, and he turns around and he says, "Well, we'll just keep Stuart Monroe then." And I was like, oh, I was punching the back of his seat, and he kept going, and eventually, obviously, I think Walter gave in a little bit more. But as I say, the first time I met Walter was fantastic, and I just knew that it ended up being the happiest 6 years of my playing career.
Yeah. And obviously, Alistair, not leaving you out, but writing Davie's book, how did you get into doing these books?
I just kind of picking up in the research earlier. I just like immersing myself in history, and particularly the history of Rangers. So I then found that putting that into words worked out quite well, and I was quite comfortable when it came to speaking to guys like David and Goffey and Walter Smith and such like, and seemed to strike up a decent rapport and get that story. And then and said a lot of it was beneficial for me as well in terms of my mental health. I went through a bit of a kind of spell where wasn't really in a great time yet, and needed a focus away from work commitments and other challenges at that time. And it was actually recommended that I have a look at writing, and having done something about 13, 14 years ago, I then picked it back up, did the 80s book, did with Davie Wilson's book, and then it's kind of rolled on from there to David's as well. So that's kind of the kind of genesis of the writing. But it's just getting better and better, if I'm being honest. Just in terms of who I'm working with, who I'm getting the chance to speak to, and a lot of that is through the relationships that have been built through David's book. So it's I'm privileged to get to work with these people and get to talk to these people as a humble punter. And at the end of the day, I don't see myself as I was never good enough to play for the club. But it seems I've got a wee bit of talent for writing stuff about the club and writing stuff about the players that have played for the club. And obviously, I'm of a vintage that 9 in a row and in the early, kind of late 80s, early 90s were my time for starting to go and watch the club. You look at gaps in terms of stories that should be told, and to say David's was most certainly one that fell into that category. And still got a buzz every time a message comes in, either be it for David or Mark Haitley or Goffey, when there's the opportunity to interact with them and have a chat. Still have to pinch myself, but as I say, it's nice to be in that position to be able to do this.
Yeah, so you're obviously living the dream too, getting speaking to people like Walter Smith and Richard Gough.
100%, as we said off here earlier, I've had the chance of late to speak to guys like Arsene Wenger as well, and through the Davie Wilson book, I spoke to Sir Alex, and it's crazy. You find yourself. So the conversation with Sir Alex was during my lunch hour at work, and I was sitting in the car, and we weren't even necessarily talking about wee Davie. At times, we were kind of going off topic and talking about Manchester United and talking about Rangers, and David will probably kind of nod in agreement here. We managed to get a number for Coisty for David's book.
Right.
And Coisty's absolutely brilliant when you get him. But in terms of setting stuff up, it takes a wee while. But again, absolute dynamite stuff for me. I'm sitting and we're talking about Morelos and we're talking about Kemal Ruth and we're talking about how things are going at the moment. And then we're on to talk about David, and then all of a sudden we're back on to other stuff. And I'm finding I'm sitting in my dining room talking to people that I had kind of similar to David. Probably if I was to be in a dressing room with him, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable being in that dressing room with them. But getting the opportunity to speak to them and, as I say, build that relationship and have a bit of a laugh as well is just it's similar, I guess. I mean, I can never know what the feeling would be like. I can only imagine what the feeling would be like to come out the tunnel, 50,000 fans singing your name and all that kind of stuff. But for me, this is probably as close in terms of the buzz that I'm going to get. As David said, when the book came out for the first time, great feeling. Every time I see a front cover for one of the books that I'm doing, or any time I actually see that first copy coming in through the door, it's just a fantastic feeling. And it makes it all worth it. All the sort of sacrifice and all the sort of time taken to build that story. As I say, I don't like to scratch the surface. David has sort of said that as well in terms of the level of detail I like to get into, because I'm not just doing this to scratch the surface. I'm doing it to make sure that the story is told as effectively as possible and covering as much as possible. And there was certainly plenty to cover when it came to David.
Yeah, you talk there about this for Davie. Obviously, we talk about Richard Gough, obviously absolute legend, Rangers captain. What was Goughy like to play under?
He actually helped me a lot when I first came in. I remember the first day I walked in, and you go down that corridor, Jimmy Bell takes me, and by this time I realised where I am, and obviously doubted myself. And if somebody had said to me, right, Davie, you can turn around and jump back in your car and drive back up to Aberdeen, I'd have been right back in that car, because I was absolutely terrified walking in. And you walk in the dressing room and you see Mikhailichenko, Kuznetsov, Mark Walters, Haitley, McCoist, and then you just turn to your left and there's obviously Andy Gorham, Trevor Stephen, Gary Stevens, and Jimmy Bell says, okay, you're sitting here, number 6. There was no kit numbers of those days, just training numbers. And he says, you've got big shoes to fill, that's Terry Butcher's. So I was already a big bag of nerves, and he tells me that. So I sit down, and number 5 was Goughy, and number 7 was Ian Ferguson. And I eventually became a neighbour of Ian Ferguson. He persuaded me to buy a house in the same estate that he's in. Little did I know that he got his driveway redone because he conned somebody into buying a house there. So I got him a driveway. And then I had memorable moments with him coming in the car, and he had this thing about magpies, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, and he'd be driving along, he'd see a magpie, and he'd say, and he kept driving until he found another one, and he dies. He's so many superstitions and all sorts of stuff, but a fantastic guy, and great. But obviously Goughy sitting next to him, Goughy's not the shouter, the baller. He's quite calm, and I'm not saying he's shy, but he's he's relatively quiet compared to the noisy corner with McCoist and Durrant and Ian Ferguson and those guys. But he just led by example, and and he was very, very good. I remember the first few games that I played, he encouraged me to get forward, maybe start 10 yards further forward than the likes of I did at Aberdeen with Willie Miller and Alan McLeish. Obviously, they weren't quite as athletic as Goffey. But Goffey was just a great leader, and I don't think I'd really noticed how good he was until there's games when he was injured or suspended, and he wasn't there. It was a huge miss, but when he's there, it just makes the game so much easier. But he really helped me a lot, and I'm still in touch with Goffey quite a lot these days. We've always sort of still spend a bit of not time, but keep in touch with each other. But I just think he's his mannerism as well, and I think he knew how difficult it was for me, coming from Aberdeen. Obviously, it's a team that Rangers don't like. To start with, obviously being an Aberdonian, it makes it almost impossible to walk into that dressing room. But he made it all sort of make it a bit easier for me, should I say, and he took me under his wing early on. So I really got to thank Goffey for it. Even times when contracts are up, he'd help you. Not negotiate, but give you a bit of advice, and he's always an ear to sort of. And even if I know that Walter would sometimes ask him to go and go and talk to Davie or go and talk to this player and that player, and that's a relationship he had with Walter Smith. But he just made it easy for me.
Yeah, great player too. Because Guy Butters, obviously was at Tottenham. He was a youth player at Tottenham, and he was telling me that when they were kids at Tottenham, Goffey obviously had moved down to Spurs for that one season, and the coaching staff always told the defenders at Tottenham, just go and watch Richard Goff.
Yeah.
Just go and watch him.
Yeah.
Tick off Richard Goff.
Yeah, he's so calm, and he told me a story as well that when he was at Tottenham, I think David Pleat was a manager. He tried to get David Pleat to sign me from Aberdeen at Tottenham. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but he's got time for everyone. You can just see him. There was time. I remember times when I was, walking in Ibrox, and he just had time. Even if we're going to train or we're going to go out to play, he'd always talk to a supporter or talk to someone at the club, and it just took time to go around everybody and make everybody feel a huge part of it.
Yeah. So obviously, there's a few questions coming in. I've put one from your friend, Dave. I put up Stuart Finlay.
Oh, sure.
What red wine would you recommend, Davey? Is there a story about red wine?
I don't know. You might have to expand a bit on that. I'm not too sure on the red wine.
Right, Stuart, you'll have to expand. Davey doesn't know about red wine. I thought maybe there was a few red wines drunk. Obviously, we talk about the likes of Goffey, but a question on the screen now is people's all asking about what was McCoist like, in the dressing room. Was he the character he...
Yeah, he was, well, to be fair, I was quite close to that lively corner, and when I went there and I turned to my left and I saw it was Durrant, McCoist, Fergie, all in that corner, and I was very, very close to him. To be fair, I think they knew I was so quiet that they never butchered me or they never had a go at me in the 6 years, which I was quite thankful for. But McCoist was always late anyway. He always came in about a minute before we started to train anyway. But when he was there on the bus, and he just, I think, I don't know if it was because we were winning all the time at that point for 6 years, but he just made light of everything. Even in team talks and team pictures, he would just laugh and just make faces, and but he would do it so Walter wouldn't see. And but him and Ian Durrant used to terrorise wee Doddy. Doddy, you'd come in the morning and Doddy knew what you'd have in your tea or coffee, if it was one sugar, two sugars, and he'd always walk over to your peg, over to where you're sitting with a cup of tea, and Durrant, he would always say to him, Doddy, what time is it? And every time it's like that, pour the tea. It's like that, pour the tea. Every time he does it. And then there was this big TV. Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. This big TV in the corner. Ian Durrant or McCoy would say to him, "Hey, Doddy," he says, "that TV's not working. Go and try and go and plug it in. Go down the socket and flick a switch." So he go down there and he goes, as he's away to do it, Durant or McCoy should go behind him and go bang like that, and he go, oh, panic, and oh my goodness, you just there was nothing. It was never anything serious. And McCoy, the one thing I used to like about McCoy is that you see him on the telly and he's always immaculate. He's got his suit on and the tie on and always looking great, because we had to wear a collar and tie at that point. But he must have done the ironing himself, because what he did was he would take his jacket off and he'd only iron that bit. The rest of it was a million creases. That's just the way he was. But I'll be honest with you. I think he just made it for someone like myself that was on edge all the time and sort of, obviously questioned why I was there, if I was even good enough to be there. He just made it so light. The whole lot of them, it was just so light-hearted. Obviously, Coisty was the ringleader, and obviously Durant was his sidekick. But they'd have you in stitches, and whether it was a night out, whether it was 10 minutes before you're away to play Marseille or something, there's always a wee gag, a wee crack of a joke somewhere, and it just relaxed everybody. And I think was a huge part of the team spirit. So many great characters there, but some fantastic comedians, I've got to admit.
Yeah, and obviously you talked there about Goffey trying to get you to go down to Spurs, but did Terry Venables make a move for you?
He did. I think he did. Yeah, when I was at Aberdeen again, he tried to get me to go there. But again, I didn't find out these things until when I signed for Rangers. There was a tribunal. I don't even think this is in the book, to be honest with you. So in those days, the Bosman things happened. But if you would go to a club in the UK, there had to be a tribunal, a transfer fee, and what have you. And Aberdeen wanted $1.5 million for me. Rangers were going to pay 150 grand for me. And they said, what was the reason? And they the Rangers put their reasons across, and they said, well, he hasn't played for Scotland. He's only played under 21s. He hasn't done this. He hasn't done that. Obviously, it's a bit of an argument kind of thing. And then, Aberdeen put in, well, Coventry offered $500,000. Tottenham offered 800,000. Nantes offered X. All these offers that I never ever knew anything about. And obviously, I'll never forget that it's actually I had to go to the SFA in the league of the SFA offices for the tribunal that day. And I remember David Murray was there, Walter Smith was there, and Campbell Ogilvie. But obviously, I didn't realise at the other end there was Ian Donald and Alex Smith of Aberdeen. So they obviously were all sitting in a waiting room and they're all giving me daggers and everything. I felt just like as if I shouldn't be here. And so I go in and brass my case and everything. And I had no idea what it was. So they go in. So, David Murray, Walter Smith and Campbell Ogilvie go in. So I'm left sitting with Ian Donald and what you call, and there was no mobile phones. You couldn't even pretend you're looking at a phone or that. There was some sort of, trying to pretend that I was invisible. And so after that, I remember coming down and I go in the lift. They'd obviously decided a fee. And David Murray says to me, he says, well, David, you certainly will not be getting a contract extension, that's for sure. And a pay increase. Turns out it was 970,000, which was obviously a bit more than what they wanted to pay. But I needed everything to make me feel a little bit more confident. And the fact that, a club was willing to pay that for me or take the chance to pay that meant a lot to me. But it was just the whole transition to Rangers was just so surreal. And, I just wish I could go through it again.
Yeah, brilliant. We question here. Obviously, we talk about Walter Smith, but somebody says, Davie, we all know about the great Walter Smith, but from your perspective, what did you think about Archie Knox? Was he respected by yourself and the other players?
Yeah, well, I spent a bit of time with Archie. I was there for since the age of 13 at Aberdeen to maybe 18 or 19 when they left to Manchester United. So I spent a bit of time with him then. And the weirdest thing ever was that he was like, him and Alec Ferguson were just so tough. There was no break. It was a hard school. There was no praise, and nobody ever said, "Well done, you played well." It was just absolutely nothing. And I remember one time as an S form, I think it was 14. Aberdeen was sponsored by sponsored by Adidas, but you didn't get a training kit. You had to wear your own Adidas stuff. The only Adidas things shorts I had was Dundee United ones. The black ones with the orange. So I remember coming in the away dressing room, and within seconds, Archie comes in and basically says, "What are you going? What are you going? Oh!" And then he basically physically pulled them off me, put them in the bin, and gave me this biggest pair of Adidas cotton, shorts you've ever seen. And that's what he was like. And I was expecting that when I went to Rangers, but he was almost like a social convener. It was like Mr. Happy, and I think because we were winning, it made it a little bit easier. But he never took anything serious. There was times where I remember Brian Laudrup goes on the pitch before the game. You get there, you got your suits on, you go and have a look at the pitch and see what studs in those days, what you're going to wear and what have you. And I remember Archie saying to me, he says, Louders, he says, how's the park looking? He says, oh, Archie, it's very bumpy. And he says, well, keep the ball in there. There's no bumps up there. He was just, he just calmed everything. Obviously, Walter was, when Walter came in the room, there was an aura about him, and the hairs at the back of your neck stood up. And I think it was a similar thing with Graham Souness. But Archie was just it wasn't even a good cop, bad cop. Everybody just loved Archie because he was just so funny. He was totally different to what he was at Aberdeen. And obviously I was a wee scared of Archie when I was at Aberdeen, but I wasn't quite so scared when I went to Rangers. But he was the first one to open the champagne when we won things anyway.
Is that right, guys?
Chat with Gary, ironically, I chat with Archie earlier this week. Also spoke to him for David's book, and just to kind of reinforce, just a cracking guy, just loads Archie of stories, loads of kind of background that you could, for a writer like me, getting these kind of anecdotes for Archie is fantastic. And obviously there's a whole stuff about the Leeds game at Elland Road where he was coming in and he was pinning stuff up in the dressing room, and I hadn't actually realised that in the dressing room at Elland Road, I was under the impression that he'd pinned the stuff up on the notice board at Ibrox, and that was the motivation. But apparently, Mark had said to me the other week there that down at Elland Road, it was like wallpaper in the dressing room. He brought every single press cutting that he put in the notice board at Ibrox down him, and that was it. The guys went out to have a look at the park, and when they come back in, they were met with a sea of press cuttings up on the wall in the dressing room, and that's what Archie did, just to kind of give, as if there was any additional motivation required that night. But he was involved in that, and obviously there's the famous red card in the Old Firm semi-final, and I think Archie had a wee bit to do with that as well, in terms of his advice to David.
That's right. I've read that in the book. Can we talk about that red card, Davie? Or you keep that for the book?
No, Archie used to wind me up all the time. Obviously, wee Joe Miller was he was a roommate when I was at Aberdeen. Not grew up together, but S forms and first team together, and then obviously he moves to Celtic. And every time I played against him, Archie would always say to me, he says, just make sure you sort him out in the first 5 minutes. And I thought he might have been a little bit unhappy because it took me 6 minutes to sort him out, and obviously got the red card. But he had this thing. Joe always wore long sleeve shirts, jerseys, and Archie, I remember, used to say to me, he says, right, because wee Joe, if you hit him early on, his hands would disappear under his cuffs of his jersey, and he'd say, "Come on, Davie, I want to see those. I want to see those hands, wee Joe's hands disappear." And I remember one game, he was at Aberdeen at this point, and we're playing at Ibrox, and I must have hit him early on, and you know what? I remember I actually hit him so hard that I actually broke my own teeth because I'd clenched my mouth so much, and all I hear from the side, I went, "That's it, Davie, they've gone." And that was it. You couldn't see the hands were inside. He was just. I remember. What do you call it? Peter Houstra. And he got sent off. It was obviously I got sent off in that game, but I think it was the following season at Ibrox, the semi-final. I think Hampden was getting done in or something.
I was at the game.
I think Ian Durant takes the ball off Mark Haitley. Off Mike Galloway, puts the ball in. But before that, Peter Housler got sent off.
That's right.
And I'll never forget after the game, Archie, because that was the second time we beat Celtic in a cup tie with 10 men for virtually the whole game. Archie's in the dressing room thinking, do you think we can start the next game against Celtic with 10 men? He's absolutely
So, obviously for yourself, Alistair, going forward, any other books lined up?
Yes, I'm in the midst of one at the moment, and we're hoping to do a wee bit of social media stuff this week. So I'll kind of stay tight-lipped in the subject matter just now. But this one's going to be another belter. We're probably about halfway through so far. So keep an eye on social media this week, and hopefully we'll get something out. We were planning to do something last week in the run up to the game yesterday, but didn't quite get there. So hopefully something will go live. But again, it's just been a kind of natural progression, this one, from David's story, and again, privileged to get the opportunity. And this one actually came about through working with David. I spoke to this individual as part of David's book, and at the end of the conversation, he basically said, "Look, if you're," he was marking my card, essentially for doing his, and lo and behold, this is where we're at with it. So another great opportunity. So keep your eyes peeled this week. Hopefully, we'll do a wee bit of a review later on this week.
Yeah. So Stuart Finley's back with a question. Forget the wine. I think Stuart's had too many wines. How did your dad react, Dave, to you signing for the Famous, and how was it kept so quiet, especially meeting in a hotel in Stonehaven?
Well, that's in the car park in Stonehaven, and lucky enough, there was no social media, there was no mobile phones, and nobody could take a picture. It was just one of these things, and I'll never forget the day that I met with Walter, obviously shook hands, and I drove back home to my parents' house, and just told him there and then. He knew there was a chance I was going to sign for Rangers, but he was hoping that I'd maybe go to a club in England or whatever. So I did tell him, and to be honest, he wasn't the best pleased. Not so much. He was a little bit disappointed. You know, I was obviously been an Aberdeen supporter and a season ticket holder, and used to take me there and saw his son play there, and just all the just typical sort of loyal supporter. So he wasn't the best pleased, and I didn't. To be fair, he'd actually come to the games. He'd come to the games and watch. Get him tickets to come in, and you go to the players' lounge, and you go to the home and away games. So it was very, very difficult for him. Obviously my younger brother, he was 12 years younger than I was, so he was still at primary school at the time, and he got bullied and pushed downstairs, and he had one of those the old snorkel parkas that got ripped off, and all sorts of stuff. So I didn't realise the sort of effect it would have on my family. I'd sort of obviously gone to Glasgow, sort of left them all behind, and let them deal with all the nonsense that they were going to get. My dad's car got pen on it and scratched and what have you. But the one thing that my dad, after I think it was we beat Airdrie in the first Scottish Cup final for Rangers, he was at the game, and and it was probably one of the best things that it made me feel basically like 100% happy where I was, because there was just a little nagging feeling that my dad just wasn't 100%. But he did say, "Look, son, that's the best decision you've ever made." And to be fair, since then, he went to all the Rangers games, and he doesn't support Aberdeen anymore. Obviously that he just realised what a great career I've had, and obviously at Rangers was fantastic, and even to this day, I still get invited to various things at Rangers, and obviously like these podcasts and reunions and what have you. Obviously at Aberdeen, that doesn't quite happen so much. I'm a little bit of a leper when it all comes to that. So he's a proud father, and in the book he has a couple of paragraphs. He's a man of few words, and probably a little bit like myself. I came out of my shell. He hasn't come out of his shell yet. At 79 years old. But he's a very, very proud, dad. And when I actually hand delivered the book to him, and he was, I'm not saying a tear in his eye, but a very, very proud guy.
Yeah, good. Davie, would you, obviously if you're up walking around Aberdeen even nowadays, would you still get a bit of abuse?
Well, I've got less hair. I'm fatter. A lot of people don't recognise me, but to be fair, since I'm not out and about much for all these lockdowns and what have you, but no, I do get abuse now and again. If you're going to B&Q, and fortunate enough these days you've got to wear a mask so nobody can actually recognise you. So no, you get a little bit, but I think, to be fair, I think the era that gave me the hard time have sort of matured a little bit. You still get the odd ones now and again, and obviously in social media, when the book came out, and various, if I've tweeted or whatever you do, you get some Aberdeen. I actually did an Aberdeen podcast, and some people have refused to watch it. So that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't know how long ago it was since I left, but the reason I left Aberdeen to go to Rangers was in the book. So it's plain to see that if things were different, I might have still have been there.
Yeah. And also, for any of the Rangers boys watching tonight, where is the book? Amazon only?
No, I mean, it's with the relaxation of restrictions now. Then obviously you can get into bookshops now and pick it up. So all the retailers are out there. If you contact either myself or David as well, we can sort you out for copies and stuff and such like. So if you contact. David's obviously got his Twitter. I've got an Air Books Twitter page as well, so you can contact us through that. Then we can sort you out for stuff. And, Hopefully, it gets the success that the story so richly deserves.
Yeah, it's obviously I'm saying I've read it myself for most of it, and it's a real good read. Obviously, the Quiet Man. The title then, The Quiet Man Roars. Is this from Kashmir? Huh?
That was the kind of genesis of it. In terms of David had this reputation of being, as he's admitted himself, the quiet man, and then all of a sudden that reputation kind of get turned in its head through the BBC documentaries. But one of the things that's come out of the time at Kashmir that I don't necessarily think was portrayed in the documentaries was there's a man manager there. There's a guy that takes a great deal of pride in his players, and isn't this guy that just shouts and swears at his players all the time. But that's where it kind of came from. Just this quiet, unassuming guy who, for me, and I've said this a few times on podcasts and stuff like that now. David mentioned Arthur Newman earlier on. I think the last 40 years, it's probably a dead heat between David and Arthur Newman for the best left back that the club's had in that time. Borna Barisic is maybe given a wee bit of stake to claim just now, but certainly between the two of them, I think for what they brought to that role, I think that David deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as Arthur Newman.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, that's also debate in forums amongst Rangers fans: Davie Robertson or Arthur Newman.
Yep.
I'm not saying it because Davie's on here now, but I'll always go with Davie because
I'll go with Arthur Newman. Six medals from 9 in a row era. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's not bad. That's not a bad.
That's not a bad return, is it? 6 years.
Not bad for somebody who couldn't get a game for his primary school.
Not bad.
Obviously, Davie, in the book too, it talks about obviously for me and ourselves as fans, is the day we done 8 in a row. You were the first player to get on Gascoigne's back. Obviously, whenever that goal went in, that actual day, Davie, how good was Gaz? I mean, the Gaz was just amazing. What was he like?
I think, to be honest with you, that game, any time we needed something, Gaz or Loudrop would step up. And I think until those two came, we won games to being, a hard team to get scored on, a good workman-like team, good team spirit. And I think, as time went on, teams made it a little bit more difficult for us. And I think those two players coming in, it just gave us, at that level, just two players that could win the game on their own. That no matter, no defenders or midfield players or anything could cope with anything they threw at them. In training as well, the two of them were virtually impossible to play against. The one thing about Loudrop, talk about Loudrop, it's funny in training, you knew what he was going to do, but you still couldn't stop him. David Cooper was the same. I was fortunate enough to play against him. He's at Clydebank and Motherwell and Rangers, and you knew what he was going to do, but you couldn't stop him. It's the weirdest thing. And obviously Gaza that day, it was even more special for me. Obviously every time I played against Aberdeen, just to beat them and to win the title against Aberdeen, it makes it it's better than obviously playing any other team for me. And the way it happened was Brian Irvine scored and put Aberdeen 1 up, and you're thinking that the title, they won the league at some point, but the title is, it should be a damp squib at home, like it was for the 9 in a row with the Motherwell game. But we just needed something extra that day. And everybody goes on about the second goal he scored when he went the length of the park. But I actually think his first goal was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, it was his angle of his body, how he managed to put the ball away. But to score two incredible goals, probably the best goals that, you know, Ibrox have ever witnessed. It just showed the guy. He was a guy that, you know, I don't think he was that sure of himself off the pitch. But on the pitch, as soon as he crossed that line, he's in his own world. That's where he revelled. That's what he basically lived and breathed for, was to go and play, pull on the shirt. And I think at Rangers we saw the best of him. And you know, a lot of people could say, well, you know, maybe the level in Scotland isn't as good as wherever else, but he was just a fantastic player, and very, very fortunate that I got a chance to play in the same team as him. And you know, a few games, away games, were in Edinburgh or Aberdeen or Dundee or whatever. You know, the bus coming back, he would often sit next to me and just talk about his life, and obviously some funny stories, but just the fact that how lonely he can be, and how he's in those days. You know, like I said, social media, there wasn't a lot, but he was followed by photographers all over the time. And I just realised, you know, what he was going through. And when he got on the pitch, it was just an escape. And when he scored that goal, you know, that 8 in a row, that goal, that really set was a catalyst to get in there.
Yeah. Obviously, your book has a comment here. Your book has hit Australia, so it's from Frank Barrett. I've got my signed copy here in Melbourne from Air Books. I haven't started yet because I've been busy watching and celebrating 55. So the book is in Melbourne, Australia.
Aye, we managed to get reaching far and wide with it. We're getting correspondence. Obviously, there's been a bit of interest in America as well, given David's time out there in Arizona in particular. But yeah, it's there's bears everywhere at the end of the day, and there's been interest, and people have kind of jumped on it, and it's nice that people so far afield are taking an interest in obviously making purchases and whatnot, and to get the feedback that we get from these people is again, it makes it worth it. It makes it worth it when at the end it's being so well received by the supporters. Yeah.
Obviously, your mate Stuart Finlay has says, in my opinion, you should have lot more Scotland caps. Now, in the book, they talk about this in the book. What are your thoughts on this? Because you didn't get the caps, David, you should have had for Scotland.
Yeah, I think at that point, you know, it was Craig Brown and Andy Roxburgh were the managers, and Belfast was sort of dominant there. Obviously, a different type of player to what I was, a bit of a steady Eddie. He was coming to the end of his career, and then obviously Tom Boyd, right back, ended up playing left back. So it became a bit of a confidence kind of thing for me, was the fact that I didn't, you know, I was going away in hotels and travelling with the Scottish squad, and a lot of the times I was putting the Scottish squad to keep the media happy. Otherwise, you're leaving them out. But I always knew that I wouldn't play unless Tom Boyd was injured or there was the plague or something like that. You know, there was times that it was like they would name a 22-man squad, and if there was nobody injured, I was in the stand, and if there was only 18 players, I'd be in the bench. So I knew the writing was on the wall, and my biggest fear really was, you know, when I came back on a Thursday after being away all week, you go back to training, and I was never the most confident person in my own ability, and it took its toll on me a little bit. The next game I played for Rangers, I was a little bit unsure of myself. So eventually we played a game, I think we played Switzerland, that's what it was, at Pittodrie, and I wasn't even in the squad, and every left back in Scotland was injured, and I got a late call in, and ended up playing. Actually said I played really well, and I thought that was it. I'm going to start building the caps up, and then we go to, I think it was Malta, and suddenly Tom Boyd's still out, and Rob McKinnon gets drafted in. He was at Motherwell, and he plays. So and then, you know, he gets taken off, and I think Jim McAnally goes on at left back or whatever, and at that point, I realised that it wasn't for me, and many people. I told obviously Craig Brown that I didn't want to be selected. Not so much being full of myself, where a lot of people took it, oh, this guy's arrogant and whatever. It was just the fact that I didn't want to lose my place at Rangers through lack of confidence. So eventually, I decided that, you know, that was it. And a lot of people have asked me, would I change anything? And I wouldn't change anything. I'm what I've achieved throughout my career has been fantastic, and I can still, even though there's only 3 caps for Scotland, I can say I played at every level for the Scottish national team, which I'm proud of. But I've just had a fantastic career, and as I keep going back to how my career first started, it's you've got to pinch yourself at times that it's actually me and not somebody else.
Yeah, because obviously at that time when you were at Rangers, Davey, you talk about players, even like Ian Ferguson, he got very little caps as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that for me, Ian Ferguson's one of the most, you get obviously Ally McCoy, John Brown, the die in the wool, Rangers, fans getting to play for the team, but Fergie was like that, and I don't think he gets the recognition that he deserves. I don't know if you know, but before obviously Scott Brown, winning all the domestic medals, Ian Ferguson had the highest amount of domestic medals prior to that. Which says a lot to him, and I don't think a lot of people know that. But I just think he was just a fantastic player, and he's one of those players that sometimes you don't notice him in the game, but if he's not playing, you notice he's not there. He just puts so much effort in, and the amount of important goals he scored for Rangers, and I just think he's one of the best midfield players I've ever played with.
Yeah.
David obviously mentioned John Brown there again. David's return of 3 caps. The fact that John Brown, in terms of what John Brown contributed to the club in that era, was never capped by Scotland, is incredible. When you think now to guys like David and John Brown, who were in that team, the most successful team in the country, yet couldn't get a regular berth in the national team. Incredible.
Yeah, but even talk about you chat about Scotland, but the likes of Alan Hansen was another player at Liverpool.
Yeah, there was a few. I mean, I think in those days there was, as Alan McLeish, there was Alan Hansen, there was Willie Miller. There's a lot of big, David Neary, and a lot of top level players. But I think latterly, like John Brown, in my opinion, him and Goffey was the best centre back partnership, or Scottish, even in the Scottish League, but also anywhere. I don't think, just for sheer grit, John Brown, he's one guy that you'd sort of, you put your house on him, and he maybe wasn't the quickest, but he just so much determination, and I think that's why we were so successful. I remember the Leeds game, John Brown and Goffey, and obviously the goalie. It was just no one was ever going to get through that. And you look in that game where Bomber's throwing himself in front of things, and he's up against world class players. Rudy Vollers and Alan Boksic, and he was absolutely fantastic. He never gave him a kick, and it's just it bewilders me why. I mean, I don't even know if he made a squad, let alone play.
I don't know.
I don't even think he did.
No, I don't think he did.
So obviously, but was there an agenda against Rangers?
Well, you talk about the return of caps. Coop only got 22 as well. Madness.
I something think it's something in Scotland. Maybe your face doesn't fit. But somebody like Davie Cooper's. I mean, he's obviously a legend and probably the best winger that Scotland have produced, and obviously a lack of caps there. I go through them all. I remember in the 70s, it was Joe Harper, top goal scorer in Scotland. He ended up with 3 caps as well. So there's a lot of, and I sometimes think it's your face doesn't fit, and obviously I know as a manager and a coach that there's players that you like and a style of player that you like, but I don't know why, like John Brown, how no one would like his style of play. He was a defender and he defended. It's not, nobody got past him. The ball never got past him. Nothing got past him. Just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Adrian Mulvaney has says, Davey, he used to bet you for the first goal scorer and he made a few quid.
I don't believe that. First goal. There was one thing I always, for some reason, any time we lost, I got man of the match. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I always got the sponsors man of the match or the Bells man of the match. You lose a game and lost and get man of the match. So I don't know if it means I'm a fighter or bad luck. Yeah. I don't know.
And a comment there from Wolf Marshall. Wolf says, guys, I've got the book. It's a great read. Thanks for doing it. Obviously, Wolf's from Aberdeen. No Wolf well. Yeah, you know Will Fye, top Rangers guy. Aye.
Yeah, he'll be a bit sunburnt today, like I've got to be.
Is it warm up there, Davey?
I was boiling hot today. I was out in the garden all day, so it's not often you get sunburn in Aberdeen, I'll tell you.
Right, and Maureen Brown has sent you a message. Big hello to Davey and the lovely Kim. Hopefully see you soon.
Yep, hopefully we can get you there. Yep, obviously Kim's obviously keeps me on my toes all the time, as everyone knows.
Yeah, and Wolf says we're chatting about players, Rangers players not getting capped. He says Derek Johnson was the league's top scorer in '78, went to the World Cup but never got him into football.
Gary, just before he's going, I need to duck out. So thanks for the
opportunity.
Right.
All right, Alistair.
And I'll catch up with you soon. All right.
All right.
Okay,
cheers, Alistair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay,
bye.
cheers.
Bye. Oh, sorry. There you're back now, Davey.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So he's talking there about Derek Johnson. Obviously, he was the top scorer in 78. Went to the World Cup and never got him into football.
I think in that era there was a lot. It was Joe Jordans. There was a lot of top level players, but it just shows you how the game's changed now. I think now you struggle to actually find a front two or a centre back partnership or a regular one. But there was just so many good players in those days. And Derek Johnson, I remember I actually played against him in a reserve game when I was 14 for Aberdeen. And I think it might have been the night I actually scored 2 own goals. We're playing Aberdeen. I was Aberdeen in the reserves. I was 14-year-old, and Derek Johnston was playing the reserves, and he's playing as a centre back in those days. We're 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, and John McDonald whips a ball in. I put the ball on the roof of the net, 1 each, and then the ball's coming back, and I try and play the ball back to Brian Gunn, the goalie, lobs him, and lose 2-1. I remember coming in, the late Teddy Scott comes in and starts shouting at me because we're 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go and we lose 2-1. I scored 2 goals for Rangers. And he says, you know what? He says, do you want to play for Rangers? And so obviously I did. So there's a funny one because there was actually a book being done. Aberdeen were doing a book. Some guy was doing a book because Pittodrie's going to be no more. And he says, so I get asked, what's the most memorable time and all the stuff at Pittodrie and everything. And most of it was when I was playing for Rangers. And he says, what's the best goal you've scored most memorable goal you scored at Pittodrie? I only ever scored 4 goals, and all 4 were for Rangers. So I don't think any of that's going to get printed.
That's not going to be the book, Davey. No. Brilliant. So there's the other guy, Bob Chalmers says, Davey, great book and a great evening. Enjoyed them. Looking forward to your next book. And there you go. You must be bringing a second book out, Davey.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. Unless Alistair wants to do another one.
Yeah. And David Tierney says, Davey, any idea where I can get a cashmere shirt?
Tell me to get in touch with you and I'll try and sort one out.
There you go then. Yeah, okay.
Get in touch with Gary and I'll sort one out.
Yeah, Davey. Obviously, we can't go without chatting quickly about the cashmere. Obviously, the real cashmere in the TV show. I mean, Nick, it was an Adrian Char, Radio 5. Was it Radio 5? You done an interview with Kim?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the guy says, I think he swore 96 times.
Yeah, that was the first one. The second one was about 120, wasn't it?
So we were out at Orsa last year, and it was George Alberts and Arthur Newman there, and we were chatting about the show and all. And I says to Alberts, well, Davey swore 96 times. He goes, he never fucking spoke when he was at Ibrox.
No, it's true. I'll tell you, Alan McLaren, I was going back, I did a corporate thing at Ibrox, and I was talking to Alan McLaren, and he says to me, he says, you know what? He says, somebody says, have you seen that documentary, Real Kashmir? And he goes, no. He says, oh, Davie Robertson did it. He says, what? Was it a silent movie?
But Davey, obviously in the book, I've read about the book too, but another bit of the book is the training in Kashmir, the snow. You ended up training in somebody's front living room.
Oh, well, I think you forget how lucky you are being obviously living in the UK and the US when I did. But I got arrived in Kashmir, and I thought everywhere in India was hot, but
that's what I thought too.
I arrived in January in Kashmir, and there was snow and all sorts. So obviously we couldn't train, and with an AstroTurf pitch was covered in snow. So one of the owners says, "Oh, we'll go indoor." So I'm expecting at the very worst a school gym hall. So I get in there and it's like about a 20 by 8 room. It's got a green carpet, unfortunately. It's got windows all the way around, all the way around it, and it's got 2 ceiling fans. And I thought that was the reception to go into the school gym hall, and somebody says, no, you're training here. So somehow we managed to avoid breaking windows. And the next day, we go to our training ground, and we got told that the police had cleared the pitch, but all they'd done is like build snowmen, so you had to do slaloms and everything. So I eventually said to one of us, look, I'll tell you what, we'll go back to that indoor place. So I had this guy, Ifty, that was my driver. And like in India, they're always late. So I'm waiting to get picked up. And as I'm waiting, here's people putting furniture back into the room. It was actually somebody's front lounge over in, TVs and sofas and tables going back in. And it's funny because it was about a year ago. So that was maybe 5 years ago that happened. But a year ago, I ended up going to a wedding, and it was actually in somebody's house, and it was the same room because I remember the ceiling fan, the carpet, the green carpet, and the windows. But just so many bizarre things. And like the book, when I read that chapter of Real Kashmir, I can't believe how I've actually managed to sort of continue going there for 4 or 5 years, because when you see it all put down, it must be crazy having, keep going back. Just the most bizarre stories. There's not a day goes past when, something happens as a challenge, and you go there, and whatever you think should happen, the opposite always happens. There's just no common sense at all.
Yeah. Davie, planning to stay there much longer?
Well, I'm planning to go back this year, but obviously things in India are not the best at the moment. Things are getting worse, and the healthcare can't cope, and it's a sad place at the moment. I think they'd almost got over it. We played in a bio bubble the last season, so I think if there's going to be a season, it might be that again, and it's going to be tough. So, but there's word that it might not even be a season next season. So it's all up in the air at the moment. But it's almost like a second home now, believe it or not. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, but
fantastic.
Kim won't move out yet, no?
No. Kim's been a couple of times, and it was quite not funny. I've never heard the end of it. She came over 2 weeks before the last lockdown. She normally comes over a couple of times a year, so this time she comes over, and she says, "Do you think it's safe, all this coronavirus?" Because no one knew anything about it at the time. I goes, "Oh no, don't worry, it'll be fine. Season's almost finished. We're going to go to Dubai on the way home." Anyway, she arrives 10 days later. Lockdown, stuck in Kashmir for 49 days, and I was stuck in a hotel room with her because we couldn't move, we couldn't get out of the hotel, we could only leave the room to go for meals in the hotel, and you can just imagine for 49 days, I never heard the end of it. I used to pretend I was sleeping quite a lot to try and get away from it all. So I don't think she'll go back anytime soon.
No, brilliant. Davie, obviously, before we let you go, obviously you're on here over an hour now. I can't help but in the book I read about the time you signed the goalie for who were you managing?
Elgin City.
Elgin. So you signed the goalie. Now, without giving too much away, because people have got to buy the book to read it, drop us a wee bit about what the goalie was like. So what happened at Elgin?
Well, I had a bit of a goalkeeping crisis. I had 2 goalkeepers, and they were both injured in the game and that was on the Monday, and I had a game on the Saturday. And somebody called me about a Rangers event or some supporters thing. I'm not sure what it was. And anyway, I says, "Look, I'm subbing for a goalie." And he goes, "Oh, Andy Gorham, he's playing again." I goes, "Oh, is he?" So I was so desperate that I got Andy in as a trialist for 3 games. And I tried Dennis Miller, he's got he's a gruff guy. He doesn't no emotion, nothing's passed away right enough. Anyway, I go to him, I says, "Andy Gorham, I've got to bring Andy Gorham in." He goes, "Oh, he's panicking and everything." So anyway, we go in there and we play Albion Rovers and lose 5-0. So after the game, obviously I go in the dressing room, and you've obviously got to go and see the chairman afterwards. And Dennis says, "Well," and I goes, "Well, his distribution was good." He goes, "Yes, from the back of the net." And then I says to him, "But at least," because he advertised before the game, I said, "At least there'll be a few more in the crowd, and that'll help pay for things." He goes, "Yes, an extra 44. And then it was quite funny. because, as I say, he's quite droll and dry sense of humour. Or just he's a very, very good guy, right enough. And there was word in the newspapers shortly after Andy left Elgin about Gaza had left Kettering Town. He's looking for the club, and I'll never forget getting a phone call, and all I got was, "Don't get any ideas." And he he didn't even say. He just put the phone down, and that was it. And I goes, "Oh, okay, then Gaza won't be coming to Elgin."
Brilliant, Davie. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Davie, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Folks that need the book can get it from obviously Amazon, and it's in the bookshops now. So hopefully the book sells plenty of copies, Davie.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I think it will. It's a great read,
Yeah.
and people should get it. Obviously, the stories, good stories. So, Davie, thanks very much for coming on, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Okay.
All right, Davie. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night. Bye. Okay, folks. So that's Davie Robertson. Hope you all enjoyed it. Obviously, if you should buy the book. The book's really, really good, and plenty of good stories of your Gaza and your Gorhams and all lemons. And books, obviously, you can buy it on Amazon, folks, and all the good bookshops. So hopefully, folks, will be back. Oh, by the way, hopefully we'll have a ex-Rangers player. I'm not allowed to say the name of an ex-Rangers player. Hopefully, coming on very, very soon. Big name, massive name. What else can I say? He does TV work, but I'm not allowed to say the name at the minute until it's all sorted. So, folks, I hope you all enjoyed the podcast, and we'll catch you later. Good night, folks.